I'm live. I'm live. Sorry, I was trying to fix up the internet. Welcome. Today, what day is it? Tuesday, the 21st of October. We are doing a little live here today, a little bit of a chat. Webinar. I don't have PowerPoint presentations, but to talk about fussy eating. It's a topic that comes up a lot. I've worked with food for over 20 years now, and probably the last 14 with kids and families in kind of a community education kind of space. And it is time and time again something that comes up for families and for parents of young children. And we could talk about it forever. There is a lot of nuance in it as well, depending on you as parents, your child, their developmental stage, their perhaps how they were born, and the environment that they're raised in. There's so many different factors that can affect the way that a child might present at the table with food and with eating. But I think it is still worthy of conversation because there are a lot of similarities with people's journeys in regards to food and fussy eating with their children. And it's something where there can be a lot of worry for parents. And I really want to alleviate that worry because some things are quite normal, different stages that they go through. In equally with that, though, we often have this opportunity when they're roughly anywhere from 1, but more like 18 months where developmentally there's a lot of knowing that goes on, no to this, no to that. And if we don't have our toolkit ready to be able to support our children in that moment, it can spiral into a style of eating that perhaps is not aligned with where you originally wanted to be. And often we can call that something like the chicken nugget cycle, for instance. And so I wanted to, for the next couple of months, just talk about some really simple things which might seem quite basic. But when we look at health, for instance, it's often the basic things, really, if we attack those ones first and get them in line, some of the other areas do naturally just flow. For instance, like with children as well, but equally with myself, if I'm 43 now, and so starting to go into a different stage of my life, and I really need to prioritize sleep, nutrition, rest, and water and exercise. So like really basic things before I start thinking about other areas as well. So similarly with children, I just wanted to be able to pick out a few things for each of these chats that we're going to have each month, just for you to be able to think about them. I don't want to have 1,000 different things for you have to do because that's completely unachievable, especially when you've got young children. Your life is very busy. And so if we can come away with just 3 things and 3 different kind of actionable points, you're more likely to be able to delve into them and really think about them. So I put up a post the other day about the division of responsibility by Ellen Satter, who is I'm pretty sure she's like a psychiatrist, and just studying sort of that sort of psychology of eating and family meal times. And I wanted to flow on a little bit further than that, because obviously any theory is something that doesn't incorporate the nuance of everybody's lives, but you can't fill that in a 600-word post. So in talking about the division of responsibility, just to summarize it here, so the idea is that the parent or carer or adult in the relationship of the eating dynamic is responsible for what is the meal, where it's going to be served, and when it's going to be served. And the child is responsible if they're going to eat it and how much. And that is the basic premise of it. And there is nuance there, as I spoke about. But to extend that out further, I have my notes here on my piece of paper. So I wanted to, the first thing on that is obviously a lot of these theories are for neurotypical children. And I say that because neurodivergency, there is, if a child's neurodivergent, there's often some sort of typical things that kind of happen, which is not typical across all children, but in terms, say, for instance, if they're very sensitive to taste, touch, feel, you often will, a symptom of that will be that they have trouble with eating different foods. And so I want to talk about this in a neurotypical kind of way, because often neurodivergent children will require a bit more additional support and guidance with a feeding specialist, be that a speechy or an OT that's trained in pediatric feeding. But when people say to me like, oh, do I need to see someone to be able to work with this? I don't really see people one-on-one, because I do more group kind of context, not clinical one-on-one. But to be able to talk through that with families, because I am a touch point, because I'm seeing children regularly at the garden or in incursions, which I don't do as much anymore, but with the community, I often say to the families, what does your child eat? So if you're worried about what your child's eating, sit down and write down all the things that your child eats. And when I say that as well, I'm saying, if they eat pasta, do they eat penne pasta and do they eat spaghetti pasta? Because in this kind of realm, I wrote this in the post actually, penne and long regular spaghetti pasta, that's two different foods, because we look at it in terms of that they're not just shape specific, because some children can be fixated that they'll only eat penne pasta, for instance. And the reason why we like to write down all those foods is it gives you a really good idea about what kind of macronutrients they're eating. So the real aim of the game with eating, obviously, is, well, not obviously, but the real aim of the game with eating is to have a very varied diet that covers multiple different macro and micronutrients. So macronutrients are things like carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and fruits and vegetables. Yeah, that's like that real, also, no, that's a food group, carbohydrate, protein, and fats. And then we've got our micronutrients, which are like the vitamins and minerals. So when we write down what they're eating, so we often talk to people and say, okay, so if it was a child that was quite fussy, for instance, they might be having chicken nuggets and sausages. They might be eating ham. So we've got some protein there. They might be eating yogurt. So yeah, so we've got some protein there. They might be eating bread and crackers. So we've got some carbohydrates there. And then they might eat watermelon, sultanas, and grated carrots. So we've got some of the different sort of fruits and vegetables there. And then they might eat like avocado or something, which is fat, which is also fat in the yogurt. There's a lot of crossover, of course. And when we look at that, we go, actually, there's quite a diverse diet. Yes, they're not eating the whole meal that you're creating, but they are learning about food. They're learning about different textures. They're learning about different flavors. They're learning about different consistencies. They're learning about cold and hot temperature and things like that. So there is a diverse range happening there. It gives us an understanding as well if you might see themes within those foods as well. So, for instance, they might be eating a lot of packaged processed foods, which, look, that's not necessarily a goal for everyone, but it is something that a lot of children might get on that cycle of. And the reason for that is often, my background being food science too, when you're manufacturing food, you need it to be the same every single time, because if someone's buying a particular food, they want it to be the exact same way as they'd had last time. So it's cut the same, the texture's the same, the viscosity's the same, the temperature's the same, the flavor's the same. The way it breaks down, dissolves in your mouth is the same. It is homogenous. There is no diversity there. And that repetition can be very nurturing to some children who really don't want to have, they want to know what's coming next. And children do like to know what's coming next. So the first thing I always ask is, so to come back on that, is what does your child currently eat? Write it down. If your child eats under 20 foods, and I know that might seem like not a lot, but in context, it actually is quite a lot, especially when they're little and they're learning about foods. And 20 foods can often incorporate a diversity of food and variety, which is important. If they are eating under 20, that is often a time that I would say to someone to maybe seek some additional help, because you need support to be able to increase that variety so that you're getting a variety of nutrition. Diversity and variety means you're getting multiple different macro and micronutrients. That's why we're looking at number. The other reason that I would say for somebody to go and see somebody is if the parent if this is causing distress and upset within your home, you need some support to be able to help you. We don't want any parent to be upset, because if they're stressed about the mealtime, then it's not really enjoyable. And we do know that meal times can be powerful, not only from a nutritional health point of view, but also very much for an emotional and mental health point of view as your children grow. It's a real anchoring point for many families during the day. And there is research to suggest that even 3 meals together shared in a family can reduce mental health issues for children as they grow, and a reduction in antisocial behavior, shall we say, when children grow. So we do want mealtime to be stressless, not stress-free. That's impossible. But no, we do want it to be an enjoyable situation for yourself, but also for your children. And so then that relationship with food is positive, and then it spirals in a positive way. So write down the foods of what your child's eating. If you've got a lovely variety, great. Let's build on that and then keep with your exposure and trying different things and creating a really enjoyable and curious nature to eating, feeding, and food. If your child is under 20, then we want to really look at perhaps seeking some further support for you. So that's the first thing that I'd love you to do off the back of the chat today, is thinking about writing down what your child eats. Then our second point is, if you are concerned that your child perhaps is fussy, is having a think about what are your goals as a family when it comes to food. And this can be a bit tricky sometimes because if you are a 2-parent family, you often come from very different families and you have different ideas about food and what that means to you. You also were spoken to about food in different ways. For instance, in my family, my husband comes from a developing country, and in his family, God forbid you didn't eat your meal, because there literally were people down the road that didn't have food. I grew up in I grew up here in Australia, which is pretty privileged, and so we didn't have that. So I don't remember my mum ever saying, oh, people are starving in Africa, because I'm an 80s baby, so that's what was said. But she didn't really say that, but there wasn't that fear associated with food wastage as it was with my husband's family. So the way we come then to our family eating situation is quite different. And I've had to stand my ground a little bit with the way our family eating environment is and the way we talk about food. But I do need to be sensitive, of course, to his background and history there. So working together, what's important for you. For our family, it's incredibly important that we eat together at least every day. We've been really lucky with my husband's work in terms of he's never had to leave early. I probably now leave earlier because our programs are run in the morning, but we used to always have breakfast together and we always have dinner together, of course, unless there are extracurricular activities, but I'm not a big one on extracurricular activities. My children don't really do more than 2 things, even now as older children. But now as they are getting older, we have work, we have friends, they have responsibilities that they're involved in. So we do generally eat breakfast at the kitchen bench, but we have dinner at least 5 times a week together. And that is non-negotiable. And now as my children get older, we're even saying a little bit like during the weekdays, you need to be home by dinner time, even if you're going to do something social, unless it was work or a pre-organized activity. There's none of this staying out. And I am going to bring in that we do need to have dinner together on Sunday, lunch or dinner on Sunday. And so having those key things. So that's a really important part to me. Another really important goal for our family is that we don't rely on takeaway. It's nothing against takeaway. I do like it, love Thai food. We do live on the Central Coast and there's not that much diversity of food here. So I find that it's wasteful in terms of money because it can be really expensive. But equally, I can make something far more nutritious, far quicker than me even driving there that will be eaten and satisfying and great for our family too, and not as expensive. So I really have never really relied on takeaway at all. We make pizzas, we make burgers, I make a lot of our food. So I guess that is my next one, is that we cook as much as possible. That's really important to us. And I feel that because I've always done that, there hasn't really been an opportunity for the children to get hooked on any of the processed foods. I still eat processed food, don't be ridiculous. Like, of course I do. We have the bird's eye frozen fish quite a lot. I didn't grow up cooking much fish, so I'm just not, don't really feel that comfortable with cooking fish. We do cook salmon actually very regularly, but white fish I'm not cooking that often. But yeah, they are some values that we have within our family. So thinking about yourselves, what are the values that you have in your family? And everyone's different, and we're not going to put shame on what those values are, but they are important to be able to think about. Yeah, and when I look at my like parents and my brother, like we do socialize around food. It's always coming together for a meal or going out for a meal. It is quite important to our family. So we've put effort into that with our children. But your goals might be different. And the reason why I want to bring attention to that is that every family is unique, every family dynamic in terms of parents and children, ages and whatnot, and it does change as the ages go on. If you've got a wee bubba or if one of the parents is out at work at late, you can't eat together. With that family mealtime as well, though, please be mindful that sorry, parent that might be working late, that though that research does indicate even if it's just one parent, it's really just having that adult presence to be able to talk and eat with the child because um, the nutritional benefit of that is the positive parental modeling there, especially for young children. There's huge impact of that with children. But yeah, what are your goals as a family when it comes to food and with eating? And in saying that too as well, I know for some families, there's a lot of frustration. I remember one family I used to know, the dad was actually a chef and one of the little children was quite fussy and really loved beige foods. And it really was a hard time for that family coming to the idea that perhaps the child didn't enjoy food as much as the parents. But then the goal then is perhaps that the child, if you're serving food as family style eating, that the child is at the table with you. So the goal might not be what particular foods that they eat, but that we eat together. Yeah. So that's the second thing I want you to think about for your family because it's something for you to work towards. And the simplicity of it can actually be quite reassuring and sort of scaffold and hold you there in that space. And the third thing I wanted to talk to, the third point, and then we will leave it for today, is thinking about meal times with your children. So that is your responsibility as an adult in the division of responsibility is when the food is served. Now, with little children, we often say, and this is like in the early years, but I feel like it's still even with my 10-year-old, is that children need to eat every couple of hours. And if someone tells me that a child only eats 3 meals a day, you got to be kidding. So they've got little stomachs. So we say even for babies that their stomach is as big as their fist. And we can kind of really talk about that with little children as well. I know that changes as adults get old, as people get older because they've become desensitized to their satiety. But a little child, a little baby and a little child, that's really quite an important thing that we're trying to retain for them is their ability to be able to say that they're full. Gets difficult when there's manipulation or developmental cues in terms of saying no, not wanting something. That satiety kind of cue is blurred to control. But yeah, thinking about for your family, what is your rhythm in mealtime time? And I know if we're prepared for that in terms of our day planning, everything runs smoothly. And when we're looking at what time it is, for instance, so if you've got little ones getting up very early, say 5, or I know some of them get up at 4, they might be having milk or a bottle or a little pre-supper. That's not really a meal, but they might have something like that, and then they have brekkie at 6. Well, when are they going to have morning tea? Well, they're not going to have it at 10:30 with the workers with their takeaway cappuccinos. They're going to be having it at 9 o'clock or at 8:30. So thinking about the day parts of when the meals are, so that you can form a rhythm with your children. People often say, "Oh, my daughter eats so much at childcare or preschool and doesn't eat those things at home." The benefit that an early learning service has is this really strong rhythm and routine that's based around mealtime, because so much energy goes into organizing the children to come sit down together and for them to be fed, that the children know what's coming. They know when it's mealtime. It's deferred to that mealtime. And so forming that strength of rhythm with your children. Of course, some of them might go to preschool or whatnot for a couple of the days, but then on the days that they're with you, what is your rhythm and routine when they're home? And they know that it's a different rhythm and routine, but what is it for you? So do you like to have your morning tea out, for instance, or perhaps one day a week it is and one day a week it's not? At the garden, it's amazing. The children know, like, when it's 9:45, they're all coming down to sit on the mat to have their morning tea ready for the story. They know, those little cutie monkeys, schmuggerwoggers, they know what time it is, their internal cues. And that's what we're trying to develop, is their relationship with when they're hungry. And then what happens when you've got that really strong routine, they will regulate, if they're not forced to eat or finish things, how much to eat to keep themselves full until a particular time. And that's the bit that then can help support you in terms of when they say they don't want something. You can feel confident within yourself to say, if they're not having afternoon tea at, say, 3:30, that in 2 hours they will be hungry for dinner. This is, again, if they're neurotypical. Neurodivergent, it can sometimes be a bit more difficult to be able to support that in that kind of manner. But yeah, having a look. So we want at least 6 meals. We've got breakfast, we've got morning tea, we've got lunch, we've got afternoon tea, we've got dinner, and we often have a little supper as well. So yeah, thinking about what that looks like for you, because it, again, is different for every family. For instance, I know with my family, when my children were younger, we would almost have dinner by 4:45. And that's when my children were partially in preschool and in the early years of school. We would have dinner at 4:45. And sometimes, especially if they were tired, and we would have dinner for afternoon tea. But the time is still the same. Does that make sense? So we would be eating something at 3:30, and then we'd be eating perhaps at 5:30, because sometimes they just need to get back to bed at 6. And that timing, again, is different for your family depending on when they wake up, when they go to bed, if they have a nap or 2 naps perhaps. If you have a bubba, if you've got a school-age child, like a bubba and a school-age child, the dynamic kind of changes. I really like to work to the seasons or quarterly, because things change. So I have children at school, so every term I sit down and I rethink what our routine is and what we can manage as a family. I've been doing it since my eldest went to school, and it's how I keep my sanity. And I think it's really lovely, because if when your children are growing, it gives you an opportunity to sit back and see what stage you're up to and what you're managing in terms of what your mealtime routine is, and many other things, but just your mealtime routine. In saying that, I touched on that just quickly there. Some children might not like eating dinner because they're quite tired at that time, and that is okay. But you're having a mealtime occasion at that time, but perhaps you need to understand or remind yourself that they don't need to eat a dinner-style meal at dinner. Then you think about, when am I going to have more of that dinner-style meal? Perhaps you are going to have it in the afternoon tea eating occasion. There is no hard and fast about what foods are offered at different times. Don't let anybody tell you you can't have a sandwich for dinner. It just doesn't exist. Don't let anyone tell you you can't have meatballs for breakfast. If your child loves to eat a big breakfast and then they don't eat dinner, put those traditional dinner foods in breakfast. You won't get in trouble. You are allowed to do it. Cultures around the world all eat differently, and there's no hard and fast way on how you should do it. It's just really what you can manage, having the preparation of those meatballs ready for brekkie or having a sandwich there at dinner time. I do like to see families eating similar-ish foods at dinner, at the mealtime if they're eating together, just so that there can be conversation about it and peer and family modeling there, parental modeling and sibling modeling as well. It makes them feel secure and held by the similarity of what's happening. So just to tee back, I think I've covered those points, everything that I wanted to say there. So the three things I'd love you to have a think about if you're worried that your child perhaps is fussy is number one, what do they eat? Write it down specifically. And if you've got a little one that's under 3 and they're eating over 20, 30, 40 foods, I think you're doing pretty well. You might feel worried because it is a really primal responsibility to be able to feed your children. You want them to grow healthy. But if they're otherwise well and they're tracking on their growth curve, like there might be points either side, but if the median is going up there, then they're doing well. So yeah, thinking about what they're eating, write it down. Gives you some clues to the diversity, the macro and micronutrients. And just gives you a really nice little snapshot. And then you can look at that at different, quarterly or whatnot, and gives you some confidence within yourself. If, for instance, they are under 20 and you are feeling quite uncomfortable, do look to seek a pediatric feeding specialist, perhaps a speech pathologist that's trained in pediatric feeding, or perhaps an occupational therapist. Start with your GP. They might be able to tell people in your area, but also talk to the parents around you. There's lots of community groups online, and Seek people will give you lots of different opinions. It can be tricky, especially not only in Sydney, but in regional areas to find health specialists because they're very busy. But do get on the books to some. I think it can be important, especially if you are feeling very nervous. Secondly, what are your goals as a family? Because your family is unique and what you believe in is important. And when it comes to feeding, eating, and food, that is your family, definitely your family. 3, thinking about your rhythm and routine within your family and how that might change at different seasons, but thinking about for your little ones, especially in the early years before school and even after school, really, to be honest, is those sort of 6 meals every couple of hours. It means that you can always turn to if something happens in that mealtime and they don't eat anything, you know there's going to be another mealtime in a couple of hours. It also gives you opportunities to be able to meal plan better for it and put some organization. Like if the bubba's sleeping off they're sleeping, you can prepare for it because you know that lunch is at that particular time. You might already have a rhythm and routine, which is wonderful, but ensuring that you can support yourself with it and support your child with it too, I think is really lovely. And then you can build other sort of transitions into it as well, which is really sweet. So have a think about those 3 things first. They're the basics. They're the base blocks to be able to grow from that a little bit more specifically. When we come to next month in November, I'd love to talk about how to deal with different kinds of refusal with children and also, just looking at those common behaviors that happen around meal times with children to be able to support you best and stay zen to move through it and rise above it because it can be very stressful. But I do hope you enjoyed listening this afternoon, not this morning, this afternoon, about those 3 different ideas. I look forward to chatting you in this forum in November, and I'll pop that up for when we're going to talk about it a little bit further. Have a great day. Peace out.